Greetings, welcome back to Black Mirror News, where we are discussing abrupt climate change and things adjacent. I'm going to try and, get through a few things and keep this video short. It is late, and didn't mean to start this so late, but here I am. Better a video than none. Just when I thought I was going to get away from reading, lists, New Year's lists articles, I've got like 5 more to read that are fairly interesting. I'm not going to read them all right now, but I want to say thanks again for joining me in the live stream yesterday. That was cool. It was good fun. We'll do it again. I don't know the day, but probably in the next week. So I'm going to start with this article from Sky News. The Dead Sea, biblical wonder, is facing environmental disaster in slow motion. The biblical wonder is shrinking, and along with tourism and the environment, the region's security could be at stake. The region is Dead Sea is shrinking at an even faster rate than ever before and could become just a tiny pool by the middle of the century. This is from January 2nd, by the way. The bleak forecast comes from scientists who warn that the level of the sea is now falling by as much as 1.5 meters or 5 feet each year. That's a lot. The biblical wonder of the world has suffered from years of drought and failed policies to try and avert what has been described as an environmental disaster in slow motion. An expanding population across the region means that competition for scarce water resources is greater than ever. And factories mining minerals by evaporating the water also contribute to this story of destruction. Well, I guess they would. The once mighty River Jordan, where Jesus was baptized, which feeds the inland sea, is but a trickle, and the Sea of Galilee is also very low. The stricken shoreline reveals cracked and parched earth where the water once lapped between Jordan, the West Bank, and Israel, and the signs of nature's anger are everywhere. Sinkholes where the sea has dried up under the hot Middle Eastern sun make much of the area inaccessible. Some resorts and spas have had to close. Others having been built next to the water a few decades ago, have to take the tourists down to the sea by tractor train. It is depressing to see such beauty in a ruined state. Dr. Ophir Katz, an ecologist at the Dead Sea and Arava Science Center, says what is happening is catastrophic, adding it's a lesson to everyone. Don't mess with nature, because nature will always win and we will always lose. And that is a darn good rule to live by. If we keep taking fresh water from nature, from the Sea of Galilee or from the Euphrates, for example, or the Nile, we will eventually ruin the local environment. We need to take care of nature, or else we all sink with it. Ding, ding, ding. The area is a major tourist attraction. Visitors like to bob in the salty, unctuous waters, it's a good word, which are said to have healing properties. But despite the images of tranquility, the Middle East's deep conflicts are never far away. Environmentalist Gidon Bromberg from EcoPeace says if the damage is to be reversed, there needs to be a greater regional cooperation. He explained the demise of the Dead Sea is a reflection of the unsustainability of our water resources region-wide, or how about worldwide. The demise of the Dead Sea reflects competition over scarce water resources between Israel, Jordan, and Syria to the north, and the industry on the Israel and Jordanian side seeking to exploit the minerals of the Dead Sea. Anyways, I'll link this below. And see how long this is long. Okay, this is another list article from Robert Burrows, but it's really long, and I think maybe I want to cover some other things, so I think maybe I'll read this one tomorrow. Moving on to this one from Nature, International Journal of Science from yesterday. Methane beneath Greenland's ice sheet is being released. Methane produced in sediments beneath the Greenland ice sheet is released to the atmosphere by meltwater in the summer. This suggests that glacial melt could be an important global source of this greenhouse gas. Suggests sediments beneath glaciers and ice sheets harbor carbon reserves that under certain conditions can be converted to methane, a potent greenhouse gas. However, the formation and release of such methane is an unquantified component of the Arctic methane budget. Writing in Nature, Lamarche, Gagnon et al. Present direct measurements of dissolved methane and water discharge from a land terminating glacier of the Greenland ice sheet during the summer. This water, which is known as proglacial discharge, was supersaturated with methane. And the amount of methane released to the atmosphere from this discharge rivals that from other terrestrial rivers. The findings suggest that the form and evolution of subglacial hydrological systems contribute to the control of the Arctic methane cycle. Atmospheric methane concentrations varied substantially in the past, and it has been hypothesized that large reserves of methane can form and be trapped under ice sheets and glaciers when there is a favorable combination of carbon-rich sediments, high subglacial pressures, oxygen-poor conditions, and low temperatures. Rapid release of this methane during glacial retreat might trigger rapid warming, but whether large-scale release of such glacial methane could occur in the future is disputed. Field observations provide equivocal evidence for whether subglacial sediments act as a source or sink of methane. Okay. Ice core drilling operations in West Antarctica detected methane producing microbes in proglacial and subglacial sediments, but analysis of Antarctic subglacial lake sediments and proglacial sediments indicate that bacterial oxidation consumes almost all the methane produced, preventing its release to the atmosphere. Well, that is good. This bacterial methane cycling suggests that the subglacial hydrological system could serve as a methane sink. Lamarche Gagnon show that subglacial microbial oxidation of methane is not sufficient to mitigate the gases released to the atmosphere within a well-characterized subglacial catchment, an area within the subglacial water, which subglacial water collects and drains out of a common outlet in Greenland. Subglacial sediments can therefore act as a local source of methane, corroborating the results of other recent studies of subglacial methane. Okay. The observations indicate that methane concentrations tend to peak following sediment-rich proglacial discharge. The slight delay between peak methane export and proglacial discharge suggests that drainage of methane-rich water occurs just after the lateral flow of water that is associated with the greatest ice motion and during times when differences in water pressure allow the drainage of normally isolated regions of ice sheet bed into enlarged subglacial channels. Lamarche Gagnon posit that the formation and growth of subglacial channels permits the rapid evacuation of stored methane-rich meltwater, limiting the amount of time that it is exposed to the oxygen-rich subglacial hydrological system in which bacterial oxidation occurs. Okay, I'm going to link this below. I'm not going to read any more of that. You guys get the gist, I think. And let's see. Well, here's the list article that I was going to read, and this doesn't look too incredibly long. These 13 words defined our overheating planet in 2018. This is from Grist, December 20th, 2018. Every December, dictionary editors hunt through all the words in our growing lexicon to pluck out the ones that best capture the spirit of the fading year, or already passed. The top choices from 2017, feminism and complicit, neglected the environment. One dictionary editor at the time lamented the lack of new or revived words to describe our changing planet, though I managed to track down quite a few a year ago. In 2018, the table started to turn. Oxford dictionaries picked toxic, a word that describes poisons in our air and water. I would actually also, I think toxic also describes people, and I've used that word about people probably way even more than I've used it about the environment. Anyways, Collins Dictionary chose single use, a term for disposable plastic products whose unchecked proliferation are blamed for damaging the environment. It's a good one. Dictionary.com's misinformation, though it's getting a lot of use in recent years, also captures the falsehood spread about climate change. And there's much misinformation about many things. The year now coming to a close was filled with environmental chaos. Wildfires ripped through the West, destroying towns and filling big cities with smoke. Hurricanes slammed into North Carolina and Florida. A slew of scientific reports warned us that the worst was yet to come. Alas, the president still spouted climate denial on Twitter. In a warming world rife with changes, it makes sense that our vocabulary shifted too. Words took on new meanings. Hothouse. Obscure jargon launched into the news, bombogenesis, and brand new terms were coined, smokestorm. We kept tabs and collected the ones that defined our planet in 2018. You won't find these in any standard dictionary yet. Perhaps some will pop up on their pages soon, or in their pages soon. Bombogenesis, a process by which a cyclone rapidly intensifies as it experiences a drop in atmospheric pressure. Nature didn't waste any time with its New Year's resolution to bring us terrible weather. January kicked off with a bomb cyclone, a winter storm that brought wicked, cold blizzard conditions to the East Coast. That in turn introduced the masses to the obscure meteorological term bombogenesis. And thanks to climate change messing with our weather, you can expect more bitter nor'easters like this one soon. Carbon fee. Noun, a price on fossil fuels to cut down on carbon dioxide emissions. And oh, what they have done to people this year. Not a carbon tax exactly. A proposed carbon fee grabbed national attention this year with ballot measures in Washington state. The backers of Initiative 1631 were adamant that it was a carbon fee. The difference between fee and a tax, revenue from general tax goes toward whatever the legislature decides. A fee ensures the funds go straight to a designated purpose. Opponents called I-1631 a tax anyways. Oil companies spent a record-breaking $31 million to sink it, and voters rejected the measure in November to the heartbreak of climate activists everywhere. Clean washing, noun. The classification of polluting energy sources as renewable, yes. Tired, greenwashing. Wired, clean washing. Grist delved into the complicated definition of renewable this year and found that your state might have a dirty energy secret. Burning garbage, tires, and chicken poop all count as renewable energy in Maryland, Ohio, and North Carolina, respectively. It's the very definition of clean washing, a term coined in a Food and Water Watch report in July. Yes. Climate gentrification, noun. The process by which the wealthy move to areas with lower risks from climate change, sometimes displacing low-income residents. Interesting. That is very interesting. I actually haven't heard of that actual phenomenon happening right now. Is it happening right now? But I'm sure it's been predicted. Of course, from Florida to Arizona, climate change is driving real estate markets. Is it now? I think that there might be climate change underlying some of the movement from people in the Southwest to the Northwest. There seems to be a pretty steady migration of people from, say Los Angeles to Seattle and Portland, or all points in Oregon and Washington. Because I think some people have done their research and done their studying up and figured like it's time to get the heck out. From Florida to Arizona, climate change is driving real estate markets in Miami. For instance, a Harvard study found that properties at higher elevations were increasing in value. Well now. Residents of crazy hot Phoenix are departing for cooler cities in Arizona like Flagstaff driving up property prices. A pattern of climate-driven gentrification is taking hold across the U.S. as those who are able to retreat from floods, storms, heat waves, and wildfires shift to safer areas, wrote The Guardian's Oliver Millman in September. Wow. Well, there had to be a time when it started. Hey, darn it. Just straight up lost my whole thing here. Sorry. Day zero now, and the day when taps run dry because of water shortages. And this almost happened this year in a few places. If this sounds like the title of a cli-fi horror flick, well, it kind of is. In January, officials in Cape Town, South Africa, began counting down the days until water ran out for the 4 million people who live there. Conservation measures helped the drought-stricken city stave off day zero, but the new phrase is sure to stick around as long as dwindling water supplies remain as a pressing concern. The Guardian reported in April that the next day zero water crisis could happen in Morocco, India, Iraq, or Spain, where reservoirs are shrinking fast. Yeah, there are quite a few places that are, you know, whatever, weeks or months away. And actually, a few years ago, like, was it 5 or 6 years ago, Atlanta, Georgia had a moment when they were like, well, you know, we have a drought going and we have this much water and there's a chance that we could run out of water in, you know, this many days. I'm sorry, the microphone. That's a journalism bad. Sorry. Fire-nado, a twister of flames, fire plus tornado. 2018 was an especially hellish year for wildfires. In November, at least 86 people were killed in the Camp Fire, the deadliest blaze in California's history. Wildfires across the West brought some weird phenomena with them, including fire-nados and smoke storms. See below during the Car Fire this summer. One such twister packed 143 mile-per-hour winds, equivalent to an EF3 tornado, when likely to cause severe damage. Okay, so we didn't have any. We didn't have any tornadoes on, you know, or many tornadoes in the contiguous United States, but we had fire-nados. Green New Deal, an emerging environmental platform aimed at boosting jobs while taking on climate change. Progressive politics has been a new rallying cry. The Green New Deal, backed by Representative-elect Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and 2020 presidential hopefuls like Senator Cory Booker. Where's Bernie Sanders in this conversation? Please, somebody include his name. Promises to boost the economy and help the planet simultaneously. So far, it's still in the outline stage, but it's based on President Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal, a package of programs, Civilian Conservation Corps, Public Works Administration, and much else that helped pull the U.S. out of the Great Depression. A new poll shows that 64% of registered Republicans, 64, and 92% of Democrats would support a Green New Deal. So it's a sure bet that you'll be hearing about it in a new year. So, I've been trying to tell y'all, people know what's going on, and people will back this. People will support these things. See, people want to support radical change. They really, really do. And for those that think that half of the country don't believe in climate change, shut up. It's not half the country. Half of those that identify as Republican don't believe in climate change, or less than half, maybe. So what is it? 30% of the population identify as Democrats. I don't know what the percent is probably the same percentage, because there's a lot of independents. Let's be generous and give it 40% of the population. So 20% of the population might not believe that climate change is real. And I don't even believe it's that many. So no, you are a definite, huge, big time minority, and you need to get your mind right and get your head screwed on straight, because you are wrong, dead wrong, and dead being the operative word. As in, that's what we're all going to be if we don't do something about this. Okay. Hot house, a doomsday scenario in which climate change pushes the planet into a hot, hellish equilibrium. Greenhouse effect? That's so 10 years ago. Try hot house instead. Our analysis suggests that the Earth system may be approaching a planetary threshold that could lock in a continuous, rapid pathway toward much hotter conditions. Hot house Earth, wrote a team of scientists in a well-circulated study published in August. Imagine that our world was hotter than anything seen in the past 1.2 million years, with no ice sheets and no Amazon rainforest, and you get the picture. As it happens, hot house traces back to the 1400s as a shorthand for steam baths and brothels. New abnormal, the state of unpredictability and danger brought on by climate change. The new normal tends to appear in headlines after disasters like hurricanes and wildfires. Some climate scientists disapprove of the phrase, which they say suggests that this crazy climate change world we're living in is somehow normal. It's a little more complicated than that. And as I learned from talking to lexicographer Corey Stamper, as criticism of the phrase has spread, people have started to switch it up. For instance, this summer, California Governor Jerry Brown referred to the devastating wildfires in his state as the new normal. By November, Brown was saying the new abnormal. Planet B. The imaginary backup planet will move to when Planet A, Earth, becomes uninhabitable. There is no Planet B, read the signs of marching protesters who hoped to defend science after Donald Trump's inauguration. That line has since made its way into international politics. After a painfully awkward visit to the White House in April, France's President Emmanuel Macron slipped it into a speech about Trump's plan to withdraw the United States from the Paris Agreement. By polluting the oceans, not mitigating CO2 emissions, and destroying our biodiversity, we are killing our planet, he said. Let us face it, there is no Planet B. Secret science, noun, science based on data that isn't public. Remember Scott Pruitt? It feels like 2 years ago when the then EPA administrator, lover of fancy lotions and expensive pens and first-class flights, finally resigned. It happened in July. 3 months before that, Pruitt had introduced a policy to increase transparency and secret science, a pet phrase of Lamar Smith, a Republican representative from Texas. The rule would have stopped EPA regulators from using decades of research about the damage air pollution and pesticides cause to public health. It's now on hold, but the acting EPA administrator, Andrew Wheeler, told The Hill he plans to move forward to finalize the rule next year. Smoke storm, a sudden onset of high concentrations of smoke that affect daily life. You've heard of snowstorms and thunderstorms, so why not a smoke storm? This summer, wildfires filled cities up and down the West Coast with cinder-filled smoke as thick as fog. That hazardous air is actually the deadliest public health threat from wildfires. When the tiny ashy particles get into people's lungs or blood vessels, they can lead to asthma or heart disease. Cliff Mass, a University of Washington atmospheric science professor, who has been criticized for his views on climate change, coined the term in a blog post this summer to raise awareness about the dangers of smoky air. And lastly, 0 hour, noun, the breaking point at which decisive climate action must be taken. Time's up. 0 hour, the time when a planned military operation is scheduled to begin, has taken on a new meaning. In 2017, a young climate activist named Jamie Margolin, 15 years old at the time, founded an organization named after the concept, and in July, 0 Hour launched a climate march led by young people of color on the National Mall. We want youth talking to politicians, lobbying, going to town halls, Margolin told Grist, for a documentary about our work. We're still a bunch of broke high schoolers, but we have so much more than we did last year. Yeah, it's going back to this Green New Deal. I mean, if we really wanted to make it super all-encompassing, I mean, we do need something, if we're talking about transforming the economy and transforming our entire, we can start with this country, transforming the entire way that we all live. It would take transferring the military budget into a wartime fight against climate change, and that would take redirecting all kinds of resources and just training people in growing their own food and training people in living, giving people communities and houses and land, and we really need to be serious about this, and we need to actually just nationalize and shut down all industries that revolve around consumerism. Shut down all fast food restaurants, shut down all, we need to just start targeting things and shutting them down, starting with the most superfluous things and, walking down the ladder. This is what it's going to take. We need to nationalize industry and nationalize agriculture and localize agriculture. But the first thing we need to do is just start shutting down companies. Obviously people need certain things. We need, certain things to, clothes. to be alive. We need clothes and food. We have so much stuff already out, circulating. There are so many bicycles and so many light bulbs and so many things already made, already produced. We can just start by stopping the industry, stopping the production phase part of that, and start reclaiming all of these, just all these goods that are just laying about for sale, and just redistribute them. Just redistribute the things we need. We need to start training people to fix things instead of buy things. Fixing whatever cars that we might still be using or keeping in service. Eliminating, maybe eliminating the private ownership of cars. There's enough cars and parts out there to keep a few vehicles running for a long time, for a really, really long time. Or we could just develop a few, very, very few electric vehicles to be used for mass transit. It's actually really quite simple if you think through the solutions. If you think through a plan, it is not that hard. It's just the difficulty lies in the doing. If you said these things to any, a lot of people, or if you actually were allowed to say these things on national TV, I mean, heads would just immediately blow up. There would just be blood and brains on the screen, because there's just no, the keepers of the paradigm are having none of that talk. But it's actually the talk that needs to be had. And so I'm going to start talking about it, or I've been already talking about it. I think other people should be talking about it as well. I mean, it's talking about, switching over to a carbon-free technologies. That's only half the story, and that's really not what we need. We don't need more industry. We need less industry. We need to shut it down. Shut it down. That's all I have for you tonight. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so at the links below. Until next time, peace.